This video speak about bike riding and following the traffic laws and what I recommend as far as how I bike. I've been biking like every single day pretty much for like the last 16 years or longer. Biking is a big part of my lifestyle, and thankfully I've never gotten into any accident that was life-threatening or put me in the hospital or caused like injury. But recently, maybe like 6 months ago, there was an accident. It wasn't a major accident, but it was the majorest accident that I've ever been involved in. I was riding my bike and a car turned into me and cracked my front wheel. Luckily I was okay, but that's the most serious accident that I've gotten into as far as bikes are concerned. I never got hurt though, so I'm lucky, but who knows what's gonna happen in the future. That could change. But I've actually gone to a bike riding course with the police, and they would teach you how to ride a bike according to their standards. And I'm gonna share that information with you guys. But the way that you're supposed to do it legally, you're supposed to follow the traffic laws, and that's generally what you want to do. You want to ride your bike with the traffic. The direction of the traffic is where you want to go. You don't want to ride your bike against traffic. Now, people might wonder, why would you do that? They might think, well, it's safer if you ride against traffic, so you could see the cars and you can see if they're gonna try to swerve into you and things like that. But the reason why is because when you go with the flow of traffic, it's something that the drivers, it's predictable for them. They know more of how you're gonna move as a cyclist. It's predictable, but if you start changing things up and you start going against them, it changes things up, especially when people are making a right-hand turn. They're always looking towards the left first. They're not going to look towards the right, because that's what they're trained to do. So if you got somebody that's trying to make a right-hand turn, he's looking to the left, and you're going against the traffic, they're not going to look to the right, and the next thing you know, as they make that right-hand turn, they're going to turn right into you. So that's one of the major things that you have to be attentive of. So you're not supposed to ride your bike against traffic. You're also not supposed to ride on a sidewalk. And normally, when you're a beginning cyclist, you normally ride on the sidewalk because you don't feel comfortable on the road. And yes, it feels safer, but a lot of times it's against the law to ride on the sidewalk, because the sidewalk is for pedestrians, and when you're riding on the sidewalk, you're jeopardizing the pedestrians. And I know a lot of people will be like, well, there's not even any pedestrians anyway. But another reason too is when people are trying to, once again, make a right-hand turn, they're going to be pulling right in front of you. And if they don't expect you, they could actually hit you while you're riding past, because they're going to pull out enough to see the road. And by the time that they pull out to see the road, they don't expect you riding your bike on the sidewalk, and then they can hit you while you're riding on the sidewalk as they're pulling out to look towards the left so they can make a right-hand turn. In addition, like I said, it's not a bike lane, and there's traffic. It's against the law to ride on the sidewalk. Sometimes the police or the law says that as long as you're under 12 years old, you can ride on the sidewalk. But if you're an adult, you're not allowed to ride on the sidewalk. And there's even police officers that could write you tickets for riding on the sidewalk, and it's happened to even a couple of people that I know. they actually were written citations for riding on the sidewalk. But if you're riding a road bike and you're a road cyclist, you got one of those high-end bikes, for you to ride on the sidewalk, it's unprofessional. It's amateur. You don't ride on the sidewalk when you got one of those high-end road bikes. You ride with the street, and plus it just makes you go faster when you ride on the street, because on the sidewalk there's a lot of bumps and that slows you down. So you don't want to ride on the sidewalk anyway, even if you especially have one of those road bikes, because you want to keep going as fast as you could go. So that's one thing. You don't want to ride against traffic. You don't want to ride on the sidewalk. Other things, it's very important and intelligent to have a helmet on. When I first started riding bicycles, I wouldn't wear a helmet, but then again, back at that time, I was riding those mountain bikes and all that. I wasn't going all that fast, and you ride on sidewalks, jump curbs. But when you're riding a road bike, it's a different type of riding. You're going like really fast, and if you're going 20-30 miles per hour on a road bike, one slip, one fall, you could be seriously injured and potentially even die. So having a helmet is very important. It could save your life. And I even have one of my students that got in an accident without a helmet, and he ended up getting stitches. But if he would have had the helmet on, he would have been fine. He wouldn't have had to get stitches. So that's one thing that's important, is to have your helmet. Wear your helmet. Don't ride on the sidewalk. Don't ride against traffic. Other thing is, when you ride at night, it's important to have like very bright front light and a very bright rear light, so then the cars could see you, because if they don't see you, it just increases your chance of getting hit. So it's for safety. And also, you could also get a citation too for not having lights on your bike. More likely you won't get the citation, but it's just not smart to ride at night without lights. Not just any lights, but quality lights. So that's one thing that's important. Other thing that's important, especially for nighttime riding, it's a good idea to wear very bright clothing, so then it increases the chance of the vehicles or the drivers of the vehicles to see you. So that's another reason why the cycling jerseys are very bright, so then it increases visibility. So that's very important. You want to ride on the right hand side of the lane, going with the flow of traffic. But right hand side of the lane, going with the flow of traffic. But you don't want to get too close, to the parked vehicles, because you got to be aware of potentially somebody opening their door, and then you getting an accident because the person opened the door on you. So you don't want to get too close to the parked vehicles. If there's no parked vehicles and you're just riding close to the curb, then that's fine. But you don't want to ride too close to the parked vehicles, because a lot of times when people are getting out their cars, they don't look for cyclists, and they just pretty much open the door right onto you. So you gotta be very careful about not letting that happen. So don't ride too close to parked vehicles. Okay. When you signal, you're supposed to use your arms to signal like which way you're turning. So if you're turning to the right, you're supposed to bend your elbow, your left elbow, to let the people behind you know that you're turning to the right. Or what I do, I just extend my right arm out to show that I'm going to the right. But you're supposed to bend your left elbow to show that you're making a right hand turn. And then if you're making a left hand turn, you just point your left arm out to the left to show that you're making that left-hand turn. So that's one thing that you want to do too, to let the vehicles know what you're about to do. Stopping at the red lights, you're supposed to do that. Make sure that you stop at the red lights before you keep going. Recently, just a week ago, there's a woman, just an 18-year-old college student, and not far from me in Northwestern University. She got killed because she got ran over by a cement truck. And the article said that she blew the red light. She was going west, and then the cement truck was going north. So what happened, the article said that she was going this way, cement truck was going this way, and then she just disregarded the red light, and then the cement truck kept going, and then it ran her over, and she ended up going under the cement truck. She ended up passing away. It's very important that you stop at red lights, because there could be cars that run red lights, and then you could get hit by the car and you could die. So stop at the red lights, look, and if you're gonna disregard the red light after you look, that's a decision up to you. You're not supposed to, but a lot of cyclists do it, including myself. As long as you know that there's no cars coming, then you could disregard it, but it is against the law. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to wait until it turns green, right? But if you do get in an accident and you have the red and the car hits you, then you're at fault. Okay, so if you get injured, it's not the driver's fault at that moment. And if there's witnesses, they're gonna say that the driver wasn't at fault. You had the red light, but you kept going, and then you're not gonna get compensated for your injuries. As far as stopping at the stoplights or at the stop signs, I would say you should at least slow down. You can make a full stop, which you're supposed to, but because you're going so slow, because you're on a bike, when you're slowing down, you might be going like 2 miles an hour. By that time, you could take a look to see if there's any cars, and you could just keep progressing. All right, so the red light, you got to make sure you stop. Stop signs, when you got like residential areas where there's not that much traffic, you could just kind of slow down to make sure that there's no cars, and then you could proceed. So you're the one that's taking the risks by being a cyclist and not slowing down. Because if there's an accident, chances are you're the one that's gonna get severely injured, or you're gonna die. The person in the car is protected. So it's more about your own safety to slow down on the stop signs. And just be aware of potholes. While you're riding, make sure you look to the ground to see that you dodge the potholes. Sometimes cyclists might take up the whole lane. I don't recommend to ride in the middle of the lane, because you're going to annoy a lot of the drivers. I recommend to ride on the right hand side of the lane, and that's what I do. Try to stay out of the way of the traffic. But in the police, they also showed you to stay closer to the middle, because they don't want cars to like just squeeze through that lane and then accidentally sideswipe you. But when you're closer to the middle of the lane, it forces the car to go onto the next lane to go around you, and that's what they recommended. But I don't really like to do that, because I want to stay out of the way of the vehicles, and so then they could just still pass me. But that's generally it. I mean, stopping at the stoplights, slowing down on the stop signs, being visible, make sure you wear clothing that's very visible. Have lights in the front and the rear during nighttime. Make sure you're signaling with your arm when you're making right hand turns and left hand turns. Make sure you got your helmet on. And that's pretty much what it is. That's what I recommend. I mean, you got, especially if you got like these high end bike, these high end road bikes, you're supposed to not just look professional with the right equipment, but you're also supposed to ride professionally, like ride according to what the laws are, the traffic laws are, because that's expected out of you. You should know better, because you're not an amateur cyclist. You're somebody who invested a lot of money into cycling, and you're not going slow either. You're not going like 5 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour. You're going like 20, 30 miles per hour on that bike. And you should follow the bike laws to protect yourself and just to be a good example. You don't, other things that you probably don't want to do is like cut in the middle of in between traffic. So if you got 2 lanes, you're not supposed to be riding in the middle of the lane. You're supposed to be on the right hand side. So you're not supposed to be riding in the middle of the lane between 2 lanes. Like that's dangerous, and that's something where the cars don't expect you to do that, and they could kind of, as they're switching lanes, they don't expect you to be there, and then they could they could turn right into you. So you don't want to do that. Like, that's very dangerous. So that's pretty much what it is. I recommend people to follow the laws when it comes to riding the bike. It's just that when there's a red light and there's clearly no cars, and you just keep going. I do that, and most of the time police officers are not gonna pull you over for doing that, but you're not supposed to. But at the same time, you're putting yourself at risk. You're the one taking that risk, because if you end up getting hit by a car, you're the one that's going to get injured. You're the one that might die. And in addition, the hospital is not going to pay the insurance is not going to pay your hospital bills, because you're the one at fault. So you're taking a risk when you disregard that red light. But it's just like crossing the street, when you're a pedestrian. Just make sure you look both ways and make sure that it's really, really clear before you keep proceeding. So just be very careful out there. When you're riding a bicycle, one accident could end your life. So you gotta be very careful, and don't do the stupid thing as far as like riding against traffic and going on the sidewalk and stuff like that. You're not supposed to do things like that. It actually increases the chances of an accident occurring when you're riding like that, because these vehicles are not expecting you to be riding on the sidewalk. They're not expecting you to ride against traffic, and they could very well turn into you. And I didn't understand that when I was younger, but now that I'm older and I'm actually riding like these high quality bikes, you kind of understand why you're supposed to ride that way, But that's my recommendations, and hopefully you stay safe out there when you cycle.